Welcome to your Get That Nugget for GCSE English Language. Today we'll be concentrating on giving you a framework to answer Paper 2 Question 3, the language question. This session is to complement your lessons with your teachers and not to replace them in any way. So to begin, I just want to recap the assessment objectives for this question. Now obviously, as you know, this is the same question as Paper 1 Question 2. It's a language question. And we're being asked to explain the effects of writer's choice of language, and we should be able to enhance our answer by identifying using subject terminology. The most important part to this question is that we make sure we're writing about the effects of the writer's choice of the language they have used, and then really develop the idea and link back to writer's intent, because that's why they've chosen those words, those phrases, those language devices to create effects for the reader. And then if we can enhance it, as I said, with some subject terminology, even better. But this is just an enhancement. There's no use you feature spotting within that text. And what I mean by that is you find some things in the text, you say that it's a metaphor, but you don't actually know why that metaphor has been used, and you don't really know why the effects of that metaphor use is. That wouldn't give you marks. The marks come from here. And if we can do both together, even better, but the marks do come from here. This is the most important part. Okay, so if you remember our previous cohort nuggets, we looked at this. So we were asked this question. We were asked to look at source B, and we were using the Discoveries papers. But in source B, how does the writer use language to convey his excitement at his discovery? So what we had to do is our first step, if you remember, is we obviously had to read the question because we needed to know our focus. Now here is excitement for his discovery. Then our second thing was we had to read the text. And whilst we did that, we needed to make sure I would always recommend using a highlighter, obviously, but you needed to annotate with some analysis, only brief, but some notes for you, anything that linked to the question. So anything we could possibly use for that question. Then what we did, just to recap, is I asked you to find a golden 4. So with a golden 4, in anything that you've highlighted, you need to find 4 things that you could write about, but things that you feel very confident about, or things that you feel like you can explain very well. As I said earlier, there's no point you just using something because you know that it is a metaphor or it is a simile if you don't know why. And this is all about the effects, remember? And that's our most important part. We need to make sure we're doing that. Now, if you remember from Paper 1 Question 2, also a language question, I said golden 3 there. Here we need golden 4 because this is a 12-mark question. It's also a much larger piece of text. Question 2 on Paper 1 is a small section of the text, whereas this is usually the whole source in every exam. So they'll give you one source, but it's usually the whole entirety of that source, depending on the paper, of course. But it's a much larger scale, and you need to work for those 12 marks. Now this question should be one that you're very comfortable with because you've had to do it already on Paper 1. So it's one that will make you feel quite relaxed, you're able to do it, and if you practice the skill of language analysis, that'll be even better for you. So these are some easy 12 marks up for grabs for us. So it should be one that you're very happy with. But back to our question. So we were looking at anything that conveyed excitement. And if you remember, we went through and annotated, and I showed you how to annotate. Now, the most important skill is that don't just highlight things. Don't just put, oh, this shows he's excited. Because when you then come back to write your response, they're not going to mean anything to you, and you haven't gone deep enough for a good response and a good mark. And we want those secure marks, don't we? So for example, these are annotations from last time. So feverishly, we cleared away the remaining last scraps of rubbish. So we put, that's an adverb. Yeah, that's right. We said that there was excitement and he was happy. All things that are right, but also quite basic. So yes, that's fine. But because we want a secure answer, we need to think a bit more about why we've selected that and how this conveys his excitement at the discovery. So we need to think about other words within that sentence. So we could, if we use the whole quote, we would have picked out feverishly because we've already said it's an adverb. But there are other things within that statement that we could use. So the idea that they're feverishly clearing away, yes, it shows that he's excited or they're excited and they're happy, but also think about why maybe we cleared away, or maybe the remaining last scraps, why those words. Maybe that's to add some tension or maybe some suspense, because as a reader we feel that suspense because he feels it, and all that he wants to do is clear it away quickly, because feverishly they're doing it quite quickly, they're doing it very excitably, so that he can see those discoveries. What I would also recommend is, remember, this is a great one, but there'll be better ones, and that's my advice to you. Don't just do the first 4 things in the first paragraph, because there are going to be things later that could be potentially better for you to write about. In particular with our question, because it's about his discoveries, this is almost the lead up to discovery, so it's great to write about, and he's excited for his discovery to come, but the discovery actually comes later, so don't get tricked by the question. Yes, you can use this, but when you write it up, make sure you write that this is before the discovery was made. Equally with this one, so we said there is rhetorical questions. Yes, again, excitement, joyful, he's looking forward to it, but we've been quite basic here. And the point of this nugget today is to look at how we take that a one step further and how we make an answer from what we've found. So we're going to move on down slightly. We're going to go down to here, and we're going to look at the idea that he uses a list. So we've already put that he uses a list, and it shows he's eager and proud of what he sees. But there's more there that we can use. Let's really look at the words that he has used to show that. So yes, it's a list. We know that already. We can write about that. That's fine. But then we need to take that a step further. We're analysing, remember. So things like strange black shines with a gilded monster snake appearing from within, quite ordinary looking white chests, finely carved chairs, a golden inlaid throne. So he's listing all the things that he's seen, but there is no pauses in between. There's a pause as in punctuation, but there is nothing, no other words within. So we can use that. We can use the idea there's a semicolon. And this also shows his excitement and his kind of in awe as well, because he doesn't want anything interfering with what he's seeing there. He doesn't want anything in the way of that whatsoever. There's also a couple of other things in this. The way that he uses a gilded, strange, quite ordinary. So he's using words that almost would be quite, like what he seems quite boring, but they're not. And that still shows his excitement. That although he's using quite a lot of adjectives, so he uses adjectives like black, he uses the idea that the snakes, they're finely carved, is the golden. So he uses quite a lot of adjectives to describe it. When he's actually listing, he keeps it quite simple because he's so excited he almost has to refrain himself from doing that. And that can show excitement. That can show great excitement because he's trying to control his emotions. So there are lots and lots in here that we can use. What I would recommend is going back to that question a couple of times and coming back to the text. So you'll probably find that when you go through the next time, you may have missed something. So when we did it last time, we didn't really do anything with these paragraphs. So that's what I want to look at today. So I've shown you how we can turn simple notes into something more detailed. But this one in particular, so candles were lit, the all-important telltale sign for foul gases when opening an ancient subterranean excavation. And I winded the hole by the means of the candle lit in, while Lord Carnarvon and the others waited in anxious expectation. Look what we've got there. So waited in anxious expectation, the idea of you've got ellipsis here. So we can take things on a different level. We can look at punctuation just like we did down here. The idea that he uses candles is look at those dashes as well. They add such great pace to the writing. And you can talk about that. So pace is structure, but if you're talking about these, that's okay, you can still use that. But obviously we need to then link it back to language use in some way, because this not necessarily language analysis. We're talking about the methods that writers use, that's fine. but we would be stuck when we're trying to analyse some of the words. So we need to think about some of the words that have been used and try to show his excitement. So if we're thinking about anxious expectation, so they're feeling very nervous about what they're seeing because it's an almost nervous excitement. They can't quite control their excitement. They can't quite control their emotions. And that's very evident throughout, isn't it? And you can use that. You don't just have to use one set of quotes. So if one of your ideas is that he can't control his emotions, you can use the idea that there's dashes, there's ellipsis, the idea that he feverishly. And that's where your golden 4 comes from. So one of your ideas can be that he can't control emotion. We can't control his emotions because he's so excited about his discovery. Then you can use several quotes. So it doesn't have to just be one quote. I would probably aim for 2 to 3 quotes, and they can be from different areas. Then you can focus on analysing these further to get those all important marks. And that's what I mean by golden 4. I don't just mean 4 things from the text. You can do it that way, but for us to be secure, we want 4 ideas. So we've got that he can't control his emotions. It could be this one that we did earlier, that he uses quite a lot of descriptive language and quite a lot of adjectives to show what he's seen. Again, shows his excitement. That won't just be there. That could be somewhere else. That in this whole paragraph, there's about 15 things to use. It could be the idea that he is so excited, he doesn't know what he's going to see, and that's why he's excited. So we've got the rhetorical question, we've got the anxious expectation. So the golden 4 are about ideas. And it might mean that in this question you read through once and you do annotations, but then I would recommend you read through again to come up with your golden 4 ideas. Now I would practice this question because it isn't just as simple as a paper 1 question 2 where there's 8 marks to play for.